What's good, guys? Welcome back to Small Talk on Fantasy Head-to-Head Points League. Right today, you're joined by two hosts. My name is Alan.
I'm Anson, and today we're going to be talking about tier four of the upcoming 2023-2024 ESPN head to head points league. We already did tiers one, two, and three. Make sure you guys check it out. It'll be in our channel. Go click link in the description. But we'll also be doing tier five, six, etc., dropping more fantasy content very frequently. So make sure you guys subscribe.
Yeah, let's get started. So I know right now, if you guys have watched our last video, we did not include Fred VanVleet in tier three, and that was our mistake, right? But to be fair, we decided to move him to tier three, right? Just because of the KPJ news, after him, allegedly being arrested, right? Obviously, there's an investigation going on. If he does get suspended or he gets get kicked out of the NBA, we're looking for VanVleet to take a lot of bigger role on the Houston Rockets, right? So if that everything settles down and KPJ does get out the league, then Fred VanVleet is definitely a tier three player, right? No question about it. So we'll do Fred VanVleet really quickly, right? So last season he played 69 games, averaging 42.2, right? So this was already a really solid stats as probably the second option on the Toronto Raptors. So now him moving to Houston as a number one option, right? Maybe number two, but I think he's going to be number one option, including him being able to play make a lot better. And KPJ is gone now, so it's free range for Fred VanVleet. I think his numbers can definitely take a little big of a boost. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's averaging 45 fantasy points, maybe playing the high 60, playing total games of high 60s, right? So Fred VanVleet definitely a tier three player, looking for a great season from him this year.
Yeah, with Fred VanVleet, the only concern I have is that he's not playing under Nick Nurse, who loves to run his players to the ground. Fred VanVleet's going to be playing in Houston. I don't think he's going to be averaging 36.7 minutes per game. That's the fifth highest amongst players that played over two games, right? So number one is Pascal Siakam, and his teammate is number five. I don't think Fred VanVleet's going to get 36 minutes per game. I think maybe 32, but regardless, him being the one option should make up for that deficiency.
Moving on from VanVleet, we had Zion Williamson. All right. So if you guys don't know, Zion is a phenomenal basketball player when he's healthy, right? Just look at the stats, you'll see it. 29 games played, averaging 43.2. Zion is the embodiment of high risk, high reward if you're drafting him, right? Because if you draft him and he gives you another 29 games, you're probably going to lose your league if you waste a very high draft on Zion, right? And I say waste because, like I said, it's a high risk, high reward. Let's just say he does play, 50 games, maybe 60 games, like even though he only played 60 games one time in the season, that will be a very, very high reward for you, right? If he's able to play 60 games and averaging, 43.2 fantasy points, I feel like 43.2 is a little low for him. But, let's just say he does do that. Let's say he just doubles the amount of games he plays. He plays, 60 games and he averages 43.2. I feel like he's borderline tier three now, right? Well, he is definitely in tier three if he's able to play 60 games, averaging 43.2, just because he's also a forward, right? Like we said earlier in our other videos, right? Forward positions are very, very limited, right? So if Zion's able to play 60 games, averaging 43.2, I think he'll definitely be a tier three player, right? But going through the season, he is healthy, so we can only hope for the best for him, right? He's been struggling to stay healthy, so we'll see. If he's able to stay healthy this season, I don't expect anything short of greatness for Zion this season.
Yeah, we've seen the one season where he played 61 games. He was a top 10 fantasy player. So tier one to two potential with Zion. I don't think he's taken, a major step in his game yet. I think he's came out of this league this good and he's just kind of stayed there. If he's able to stay healthy and find some type of improvement, whether it's a jump shot, whether he is better with his right hand, I think he could provide tier one value if he stays healthy. Big if though.
Yeah, definitely a big if there. Moving on from Zion, right? We got Zach Lavine, right? So just take a look at Zach Lavine's stats really quick. He played 77 games, averaging 38.6 fantasy. So just right off the bat, you guys notice, hey, Zach Lavine played a lot of games last year. Yeah, he did. He played 77, which is probably one of the highest, fantasy players. Like a lot of players struggle to get past 70, and he played 77 games, right? I know the average is a little bit low, but I do want to say, he was coming off injury in the beginning of the season. And at near the end of the season, in my opinion, I saw the Bulls kind of change up their play style a little bit, allowing Zach Lavine to have more of the ball. So maybe that's going to be a permanent change. If that is, him coming off into this new season as a number one primary scorer, I think that should give him a big boost in his fantasy value, right? But as of right now, I think coming into the next season, I think Zach LaVine's a very, very solid pick, and I'm expecting a very, very good season out of him.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. He did come off a very slow start. I just want to remind it to you guys. It's the first month of the season, only 32 minutes per game, whereas from December to March, we've seen minimum 35, 36 minutes per game average, right? And also the first 2 months, only 22 points per game, 20 points per game. That he stepped it up to 25, 26, 25, 28 in the month of April. So it really took him a while to get comfortable. I don't think this 38.6 is the accurate representation if you're evaluating Zach LaVine for next season.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. Moving on from Lavine, right? We got Paul George, right? Paul George is definitely one of the better ISO players in the league right now, especially given that he is 6'9", right? So PG played 56 games, averaging 42 fantasy points, right? There is concerns of injury, right? He hasn't been really particularly healthy for the last 2-3 seasons, right? And he is playing alongside of Kawhi and Russ, right? So if PG does take a little big of a little higher of a jump, I wouldn't be surprised if he played less games just because he is probably going to take breaks, rest back to backs. But if his production gets better, I wouldn't be surprised at that. But I don't really see him getting a lot better. So I think these numbers are kind of just right of where I would average him out for this season. So I think his season this year will probably be around the same as he did last season, maybe hopefully playing a little bit more games, but overall, I think he's in for a really, really good season.
Yeah, Paul George is a huge question mark, not only because he has his own injury risk, but his teammate Kawhi Leonard is also a big injury risk. And we see that when he's with Kawhi, his stats they're pretty good, but without Kawhi, he's a whole different animal, right? So I mean, without Paul George stats, without Kawhi last season, he averaged 26.3 points per game, which is a huge improvement over 23.8. And he also averaged, like, it's not just this season, it's a pretty big sample size of 18 games. 31 games with the Kawhi in 2022, he averaged 24, 7, and 6. So his production takes a pretty big, significant jump without Kawhi Leonard. So if he's healthy, and I'm not preying on Kawhi's downfall at all, but Kawhi is very injury prone. He load manages a lot, so without without Kawhi there, he can take a big jump. And him playing with Westbrook, we've seen he's had his MVP year, right? MVP candidate year with Russell Westbrook, so they seem to play very well together. Maybe that will give him a slight jump, but all in all, he's already an established player. He should average about the same as he did last season.
Moving on from PG, right? We got BI, Brandon Ingram, right? So I want you to take a look at Brandon Ingram. He played 45 games, averaging about 40 fantasy points per game, right? He did struggle with injury as well. However, I feel like Brandon Ingram is probably one of the underrated players, right? I know at the end of near the end of the season, he started picking up a lot more. He started scoring more, started doing more. Looked like his old self. He looked like a really strong candidate for having a breakout season this season, right? But he is still playing alongside Zion, right? Zion was injured for the end of the season, like he didn't really play anymore. So that really opened the doors for BI, right? So I think if Zion gets injured again, which is not unlikely, I would say, right? Because we see his track record. Zion's been injured every single year. I feel like Ingram is always ready to take that bigger role, bigger jump, right? So, let's just say if, knock on wood, Zion doesn't get injured, but let's just say he does, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Ingram took a really big jump, start averaging like 44 fantasy points a game, right? But if he's able to also stay healthy, let's say he plays 60 games, averages 44, that's tier 2, tier 3 level, in my opinion, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if that was what he can do this season, right?
Yeah, agree with you there. Brandon Ingram, he averaged 21 points per game with the Zion last year. And then in a 33 game sample size, Zion averaged his points per game jumped from 21 to 26.1. So that's 5 points per game increase without Zion. His assists also took a huge jump from 4.3 to 6.4. about a 30% increase in assists because he got to handle the ball more. Rebound stayed the same, but yeah, you hit on the spot. If Zion doesn't play, Ingram, we're looking at tier 2, tier 3 value. And even if he doesn't play, I mean, even if Zion stays healthy and they play together, he still should be able to average minimum 38, which puts him around this tier 4 range.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on from Ingram, right? We got Jrue Holiday, right? And I like Jrue Holiday. I had him last year on my fantasy team, right? He was a really great player. He played 67 games for me, averaged 41 fantasy points. And obviously, I understood like, hey, a lot of his fantasy points came from him scoring a lot more just because Middleton was out. Right. When Middleton was out, it really allowed Giannis and Jrue to score, but we saw how they struggled. They needed that go-to score, and when Giannis got clogged up in the lane, Jrue really couldn't really answer as that scorer. Right, there was a few games where he did well. Right, so with Middleton coming back this season, right, how will that impact Jrue? In my opinion, I think Jrue will still play the same amount of games, maybe more, maybe less, a little bit less, a little bit more. He's not really known to get too injured, right? But his fantasy points, I think, might take a hit this season, in my opinion, or last season, in my opinion. He developed a lot more as a playmaker. So even with Middleton coming back, taking some shots away from Jrue, I wouldn't be surprised if Jrue kind of just balanced it out with 2 or 3 more assists, right? So I don't think he's going to fall off that much or even fall off at all, right? So I think this season for Jrue, I think he's going to have a really, really strong season, even though he's a point guard, but I think he's going to have a really, really strong season this year.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. He did definitely take a jump because not only Middleton, but Giannis did miss a few games. So Jrue Holiday did average 22.6 and 9.5 assists per game. His regular season only 19 and 7. So his numbers are slightly high because of not only Middleton, but Giannis being injured. Nevertheless, Middleton didn't really look like himself. I'm not saying Middleton's not going to be good anymore, but Jrue Holiday looks like the second option. Looks a lot more aggressive on offense, so I expect him to keep around the same numbers.
Yeah, moving on from Jrue Holiday, right? We got Karl-Anthony Towns, right? So Cat kind of similar like Zion, but I don't think is as bad, right? He played 109 games as well, averaged 39.1, right? But when Cat actually came back though, he came back at the end of the season, like his old self. He was putting up 40, 45 fantasy points per game, which is really good, sign, as drafters, like, as players that want to draft Cat, we're like, okay, that's a good sign. He's able to come back and perform and play. Right. So I think, in my opinion, Cat this season, I don't see any signs of him slowing down. Right. I know he's playing alongside AE, and AE is developing really well. Right. That might take a hit, but I don't think Cat is going to fall off to a point where he's no longer in tier 4. Right. In my opinion, if he's able to play like let's say doubles games, he's going to play 60 games. I think he's probably going to average like 42, 43. That puts him in tier 3, tier 2 level. Right. So it really depends on how you see it. Right. Yeah, he is playing alongside AE, but let's be real here. Like Cat will get his own buckets. Right. He can shoot threes. A big man can stretch the floor out. So he's definitely going to be able to provide some really, really good fantasy value for himself. So I don't think this season is going to be really any different from his other season where he played a lot more games and averaged a lot more. Right. So I think this season for Cat's going to be a really, really strong season for him.
Yeah, I think Cat could definitely produce tier 2 caliber production. It's just with him, it's just roulette, right? It's 29, 74 games, 35 games, 77, and then I guess this 50 game season counted as green. So basically a roulette with Karl-Anthony Towns games played. But if he's able to stay on the court, we've seen like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Karl-Anthony Towns was a late first round pick, early second at latest. So I know Anthony Edwards is kind of the face of the franchise now, but he gets definitely still average 24 points per game, 25 points per game. His rebounding numbers might not come back just because they kind of looked bad last year, and that's with Rudy Gobert. So he's still going to play with Gobert. I don't think his rebounding is going to get up to 12, 12.3, 12.4, which is kind of his prime. But I do expect the scoring to come back up to 25. And if he's able to stay healthy, I expect tier 2 production. But it's just a big if for Cat.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on from Cat, right? We got Darius Garland. Okay, so Darius Garland total, just look at the total games played. He played 69 games, averaged 40 fantasy points per game. Right. And like I said, I think Garland is one of those players that is developing extremely well. I feel like he's definitely going to be one of those players that might have another breakout season. I know, when he was playing alongside Colin Sexton, a lot of players like, oh, Garland, how's he going to develop and step up into that role when Sexton got injured, right? And we really saw Garland blossom. Like, he really became one of those players like, wow, this player is actually really, really good, right? Why didn't we just start him over Sexton, right? But him now becoming solidify himself as a starting point guard playing alongside Mitchell, I feel like he's definitely going to be a lot better, in my opinion. I don't want to say him like better as in like Mitchell, but I think he'll be better than himself this season or like last season, right? So this season, I feel like he's going to take a big improvement in his game, right? I think he's a really, really solid playmaker, a good scorer. I feel like he does still make little mistakes here and there, but overall, I feel like, he's just hone it down a little bit, like tone it down a little bit, maybe, sharpen some rough edges. And I think he'll be a really, really solid fantasy producer, right, for a lot of players in this league.
Yeah, Darius Garland, he is 23. Is just a little gem for you guys. NBA stars to have an increase of PER, which basically sums up to overall production. PER of 6 or above. The most common PER increase for those players are age 24. That's when they hit it. So Darius Garland is going to be 24. Not going to say that he is going to be the guy to take a huge jump, but we've seen the potential. We know Darius Garland is very skilled, and he is in that age, right? He is in that age. So, we just have to wait and see. But even if he doesn't take that jump, his averages are still solid enough to put him in this tier.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. Moving on from Garland, right? We got Bam Adebayo, right? I feel like one of the more underrated players as well in this league, right? Take a look at his total games played. He played 75 games, averaging about 39 fantasy points per game, right? And the thing is, I feel like Bam really showed off in the playoffs more than in the season, right? In the season, he was a little slow right in the beginning, right? I remember, one particular friend had him, and another, person that may or may not be in this podcast try to take his take Bam off his hands for him, right? For absolutely nothing. Try to rob him broad daylight. But coming back to Bam, but I think Bam definitely showed himself out. Took a big improvement, near the in the playoffs. I don't know what happened. Maybe Jimmy Butler said something to him like, "Hey, man, you got to pick it up. I can't do everything here." And Bam really did show out. He was catching lobs, dunking over people, blocking people, right? Spin moving on Jaylen Brown, breaking his ankles and posterized. Like, man, Bam looked crazy. And if he's able to bring that, just even like 70% of 80% of that into his season, into regular season, man, I don't see how Bam can't be in tier 3, tier 2. Right. I think he's definitely a very, very solid player, has a lot of potential. Right. You just got to see how he plays in the regular season. Right. He's obviously very, very consistent. He played 75 games. Right. So I'm looking for Bam to have a great season this year.
Yeah, with Bam, we definitely saw his averages very low to start the season. The first month, 17.4, right? That's the lowest he's ever averaged throughout the entirety of last season. He hasn't even dipped below 20 points per game until the last month of the season where there was some like load management stuff going on. But besides that, he kept above 20 points per game every single month. Besides that first month, that kind of skewed his numbers. Very slow start from him, and then he kind of picked it back up, was himself again. Back to that first month, only 8 rebounds. That's also the lowest rebounds he had until that last load management type of month. But yeah, throughout the whole season, minimum 20 points per game. There's months where he averaged 10.5 rebounds, nine rebounds minimum. So I expect him to keep up that same energy for the entirety of next season.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so. Moving on from Bam, we got Dejounte Murray, right? I know Dejounte Murray, has been, up and down, right? We've seen him when he was the number one option on the Spurs, right? He was top 5 in fantasy, top 4 in fantasy, right? But as soon as he came to, the Hawks, we instantly saw the issues. Like, whoa, okay, he took a big drop, right? Because he's playing behind Trae Young now, right? We don't see them playing well together, right? We're still seeing a lot of, a lot of struggling. Like, there's a lot of misunderstanding of how they're going to play together, right? But hopefully this is the season they fix it. They work together, they work out together, they figure out what each other, strength and weaknesses are and how they can, play off of each other. Right. If they're able to do that, I'm not surprised Dejounte Murray can move to tier 3 level player. Right. But he also played 74 games. Trae Young is also one of those players that played, 70 plus games. Right. So think about that. If those two guys, these two guys, my bad, if these two guys can figure it out and play 70 plus games together, damn, they might be a solid duo in the league. People might have to be like, hey, these two guys are not something to be messed with, right? But yeah, I think Dejounte, if they're able to figure it out, I think he's in for a really good season.
Yeah, Dejounte Murray, his averages put him around this tier. He ranked 35 per game. The main value with Dejounte Murray is the fact that he could play a lot of games, 74 games. It puts him in totals, it puts him 19th last year. So very dependable option. He's going to be a shooting guard, which is a pretty good position, a lot better than point guard. So I think DeJounte Murray is a very interesting pick around this range.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on from Murray, right? Cade Cunningham. Okay.
34.9.
Okay. I know a lot of you guys, before you guys even start typing, all right. I know you guys are like, whoa, man. This guy
12 games played.
12 games playing, averaging 35. He's in tier 4. Allen, Anson, you guys out of your damn minds. Okay, listen. All right, hold on. Lower your tone. Okay, you're talking 2 champions here. Put some respect on our names. Okay, we're trying to share with you guys our vision. Okay, there is not it's not a secret that Anson and I, we both like Cade as a player, right? He's a very very solid player, very very solid point guard, and I feel like last season was a very very tough season for Cade. Last season was supposed to be his breakout season, in my opinion. I think last season was supposed to be his breakout season, but obviously injury stopped that, right? Like he couldn't even get past in the first month. He played 12 games. He averaged 3 games a week. He played a month, right? And he's able to put up 35 fantasy points. And we know a lot of players who start off the season, they like to start off slow, build the momentum, build the rhythm in, right? So I think Cade was just starting to get his stride before he got that very, very tough season-ending injury, right? But this season, he's looking very solid, right? He's playing for Team USA. We see, a lot of coaches give him a lot of praise, and I don't think that's for nothing. I see a lot of other players talking about Cade, like how this guy's the leader. He knows how to run the point, and I feel like him stepping into the Pistons lineup right now. And a lot of people are saying, "Hey, man, we don't really have a go-to player." We see Ivy kind of trying to be that guy. We see Killian Hayes trying to be that guy, but in reality, we all know what they need. They needed a Cade Cunningham, and now Cade coming back healthy, I feel like he's in for a breakout season, right? But I feel like last season he was kind of robbed of that because of his injury, right? But this season looks completely healthy, looks completely fine, right? So I'm hoping that he's able to stay healthy, right? If he's able to stay healthy, play 60 games, just 60 games, averaging maybe 42 fantasy points. That's damn near tier 2, tier 3 level, right? So I'm expecting Cade Cunningham to make that jump this year, right? He's okay, knock on wood, but he's definitely going to play over 12 games. I promise you guys that, right? Like he's definitely going to play over 12 games as long as he's able to stay healthy. He's going to play more than 12 games, right?
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. I think they're gonna make Cade Cunningham the focal point of their offense. Like you said, last year was supposed to be his breakout year. Very unfortunate injury, and then the numbers he put up, I think it was just a really bad stretch for Cade Cunningham. I don't think those numbers are accurate for what he would have done if he didn't get hurt. In those 12 games, he only shot 27.9% from three, only 41.5 from his field goal. I don't think he's gonna do worse than his rookie year, right? This is third year coming back. We've seen him play at the same level as the Team USA guys. I don't think he's gonna shoot worse than his rookie year. I don't think that's gonna happen. Last year, 28% from three is absolutely horrendous. He has stretches in his rookie year. I know he struggled when he first came into the league. He couldn't really find a 3-point shot. But then when he got settled in, and then if you pull up his numbers, uh December of his rookie year, he shot 42% from three, shot 42% in January as well, 39% in February. So I really think if Cade Cunningham can stay healthy, I don't think that's if his shot's going in, he already gets the assist. He can score in different ways besides shooting. I think he could definitely average 43, 44 to 45 fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Right, there's a reason why fade for Cade was a thing, right? Like everyone saw his potential, they know his potential. So this year, definitely looks like he's gonna have a breakout season this year. But let's let the season play out, and we'll see if we're right or wrong. All right, moving on from Cade, right? We got Kristaps Porzingis, right? So taking a look at his total games played 65 games, averaging 40.5 is kind of what I hope Zion could do. Playing 65 games just would be a miracle, or amazing for Zion. But Kristaps Porzingis really did it. He played 65 games, averaging 43.5 as probably the second or the first option on the Wizards, depends on how you see it, right? If you think Beal played as the first option, great. Okay. If you think Kristaps played as the first option, okay, cool. But the thing is, he's no longer on the Wizards. He's on the Celtics, and he's playing behind two, one superstar, I would say one all-star, right? Or two borderline superstars, you want to say Jaylen Brown's a superstar, but he's playing behind these two stars, right? So how would that impact his game? You really have to take a look. They're not going to probably run the offense with Kristaps. They might include him in some sets, some pick and pops, right? We know he's a big man that can shoot threes, so he might get a few good looks. But overall, I think Tatum and Brown are going to be the ones handling more of the offensive load, while Kristaps does more of the rebounding, maybe setting up his team, and maybe just becoming a spot up 3-point shooter as a big man, right? Because there's not a lot of people in the league that can guard Kristaps when he's out on the three. They're afraid of his drive, they're afraid of his 3-point. So I don't think his numbers are gonna go up, but I don't think they're gonna fall too far. Maybe he drops and made 3 or 4 fantasy points, but if he's still able to play 65 games, I think he's definitely still deserves to be in tier 4.
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting that 65 games from Kristaps is definitely an outlier. It's the first time he's done it since 2020,
Yeah,
2018 actually, 2018. So
and
in 5 years, first time over 60 games. So definitely outlier there. There are also some concerns over the summer. He had to do foot rehab. Came out August 23rd. That's when the news came out where he had to do a 4 to 6 week injury rehab. And in the interview, he did say he was feeling a lot better than he first started. At that time, he could start walking again without any pain. But obviously, walking and playing a 48-minute game of basketball is a lot different. So we'll see how he recovers from that. But there's still a lot of time before the season starts. I'm sure he'll be ready to go. Even if he is ready to go, it's still kind of tough to get to Kristaps. That's why he's average. His average is pretty high for this tier, but we had to drop him a little down just because of that little ambiguity and how many games he's able to play. And also his numbers were great last year, but the Wizards suck. Boston has so much more scoring options. He won't be the main guy.
Yeah. Let's move on from KP. Right, we got Desmond Bane. Right, I know you guys can just take a look at his numbers real quick. Total games played 58 games, averaging about 38.1 fantasy points per game. Which is, I feel like that's kind of where I would say tier 4 is at. Right, but I do want to bring up the fact that hey, John Moran is out for 25 games. Right, and if John Moran's out for 25 games, that's 25 more games that Desmond Bane can operate as probably the first option. Right, which would really boost his fantasy value. Right, he'll get his rhythm in more. He'll find his own shots more. So I don't think he's going to be averaging 38.1 entering the season, right? I think he was probably averaging 42, 43 points per game, right? In the beginning of the season, and maybe we'll see a slow decline as soon as Jaw comes back, but we'll definitely see about that, right? But yeah, I think Desmond Bane is in for a really, really solid season this year.
Yeah, I think he's around that age when players improve alongside like that guaranteed suspension with John Morant. I think he's really gonna have that chance to be the number one option. And he was really good in that postseason, multiple 30-point games against the Lakers, averaged 23.5, shot the ball really well. So I really think that he could really make a big jump, especially with Dylan Brooks gone on the wing, taking 16 shots per game. That's 16 more shots that could potentially go to Desmond Bane. Not that he'll get all of the shots, but no Morant, he's gonna be the guy to absorb most of those opportunities.
Yeah. Moving on from Desmond Bane, right? We got our final player in tier 4, Jaren Jackson Jr., another Grizzly, right? So you just take a look at his game, played 63 games, which is really, really good for Jaren Jackson Jr., averaging 40.7, right? I know in the beginning of the season he was injured, so a lot of people faded him for a little bit, right? He did come back after a month or so, right? So when he came back, he started ramping up really well. He started playing well, right? We saw him, eventually get the Defensive Player of the Year award, right? And I feel that last season was a lot of things that went well for Jaren Jackson Jr. And that's not to discredit him having a great season, right? I think obviously Steven Adams getting injured allowed him to have more touches and more being able to be more operate around the paint more, really let him dominate in his game, right? And obviously John Morant getting suspended near the end of the season allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to become, hey, let me try shooting the three more, let me work on my game a little more, and it really showed out. right? I think he had a solid 30 plus point game near the end of the season, and to really wrap up the season, it was like, wow, if he's able to carry this on into next season, right? Which, in my opinion, he could, because Jaw's out for 25 games. So I think it's a similar situation with Bane, right? If he's able to get that boost, get that more touches, a few more touches, right? He's gonna get a little bit more fantasy points in the beginning. And if Jaw comes back, maybe he'll slow down a little bit, right? But who knows? I think overall, I think he's a very, very solid player to be in tier 4.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson, he's able to average 40.7. He only averages 18 points per game. So any step in his offense, he'll turn into an absolute fantasy monster. With Jaren Jackson Jr., though, I know he did have a healthy season last season. Last 2 seasons, he had a relatively healthy season. However, you can't ignore that he's dealt with really big injury issues, right? So last season, 63 games, he missed the first chunk of the game because he got hurt. In the beginning of the last season, or in the offseason, he got hurt. In 2021, he played 11 games, missed the entirety of the season. And before that, he's dealt with the first 2 seasons, he's missed 20 to 30 games. So there's definitely some injury concerns there. He is having a shortened off season this upcoming season. I really hope he can stay healthy. I'm a big fan of his game. However, shortened season alongside his injury issues, it could take a toll on his body. Another thing to consider is that his best fantasy production year was last year. Maybe it's because he's just getting better, but also him playing center last year, I feel like really benefited his numbers. Steven Adams is coming back next year, so he's probably going to play power forward. He played a majority of the season as a center. He was able to average 3 blocks per game, making him defensive player of the year. That's his highest he's ever averaged. His second highest is only 2.3. So him playing center allowed him to stay in the paint. He didn't have to stretch out. Most power forwards these days are kind of at the 3 point line. So he was able to stay in the paint, guard the paint, and get more blocks. Also averaged the most amount of rebounds he's ever averaged, which was 6.8. He's never averaged above 6 before. So, and this is not even with a big increase in minutes as well. It's not like, oh, he's featured in the game more. He's 28.4. That's one more minute per game than last year, and he's played more than that before. So I really think that center position gave him a huge boost. But I'm sure he'll maintain his numbers just because he's been improving at a very steady rate.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening for Jaren Jackson Jr. this year. And that'll wrap up our tier 4 list, right? I hope you guys enjoy. Right? Is there anything else you want to add for them, Anson?
Yeah, so like I said, we already covered tiers 1, 2, and 3. Just did 4, so make sure y'all go check out that. It'll be in our channel, link in the description. We'll be dropping tiers 5, 6, etc. Top of that, when we're done with all the tiers, we'll be dropping more fantasy content, going over underrated players, overrated players, reacting to ADPs or other people's rankings. We got a lot more content for y'all. So if y'all serious about winning this year in fantasy, make sure you guys follow and subscribe.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Couldn't have said it any better, right? You guys are talking to two champions, right? We both know, we both won, each of our years, so we definitely know what we're talking about, right? And we wanted to create this channel to share, hey, this is what we see, right? There's a lot of other channels out there that Anson and I we watch, but we're like we don't really agree with, their takes, and we want to create one for ourselves where we can actually formulate our own takes, right, and share that with you guys, right? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Hope you guys have a good luck on your fantasy season, right? And we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.
Peace.